Merci.
Talk to me.
Ready. Standing by.
Light it up.
This is Captain Cassian Andor, Rebel Intelligence.
There's spies everywhere.
Cassian Andor. I need all the heroes I can get.
You son of a bitch! I'm in!
They're so fat and satisfied. 10 men feel like 100. I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
A 6-year-old boy.
Hang on!
Hello and welcome to Andor and More. This is a podcast about the Disney Plus series Andor. I'm Travis Fishburne.
I'm Alex Brunel.
And joining us this week, we have a special guest with us, somebody who conducted an experiment today. And we're going to find out the results of that. Mr. Adam Witt, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Yes, this is very exciting. When they first aired, I watched the first couple episodes of Andor, and I thought, this isn't hitting me right. Let me wait, because I had one, which Kevin Smets edited into one feature film, of like, are these just movies they're cutting up randomly? Because the endings of the first two were just like, well, that's just random, you know? So I decided I'm going to watch them as one movie, one 10-hour movie called Andor, which unfortunately I haven't seen the end of because I wanted to come do the show here. But so I have one cliffhanger left, which sounds like it's going to be a doozy as well. But
week-long bathroom break.
Yeah, exactly. But I did get up at 9 this morning and watch all of Andor up until 11.
Yeah. So, Adam, with that in mind, and you told us beforehand that you're like staying away from like discourse and any thoughts and feelings that people have. So I am very curious what your own personal, thoughts are on this series. Like 95% of it. Yeah, I have a ton of thoughts of this, but what's fun is it is like exiting a movie and you're like, God, all the things that just happened, you walk out of a movie, or particularly a thick one, you walk out of Avengers Endgame and you're like, what did I just see? Oh my God. Beginning is still there, but I'm over it because I'm just a lover of media. I don't, look, we're lucky enough to have an Andor show to begin with. Like, we're lucky to have like this giant experiment in Star Wars. So I'm very appreciative of that. If I want to dig down a little bit to my actual feelings beyond that, like I don't want to feel unappreciative, like get this off the TV. But some things I have never liked hour-long TV shows that much. I like the A-Team. A-Team was very good. But hour-long TV since the beginning of time has always been padded. Star Trek, The Next Generation. Well, I guess the original Star Trek as well, but that always didn't feel as padded. But like certain hour-long TV shows, you're like, oh, they're padding. Oh, we get to walk down the whole hallway. We get to have every part of the discussion, every nuance, everybody's opinion comes in on this, as opposed to like opinion, moving on. The thing about Star Wars is rapid. So this does not feel Star Wars at all, because Star Wars is, you're thrown in the middle episode 4. Oh, there's this thing. This is the Empire. The plans. Don't worry. But anyway, he's given the plans. What are the plans? Faster and more intense.
Yeah, faster, more intense, right? This is definitely slower, less intense, which feels out of, the intent. The irony is Star Wars is based on serials, which are these segments with this, a crawl at the beginning saying, here's what happened in the last one. If you weren't at the theater, going to get out of this one, kids, come to the theater next week. And you could break up Star Wars in that structure. You go, oh, there you go. There's where he's in peril. How's he going to get out of that one? And here's how they get out of it. Ironically, now that Star Wars has gone to serialized storytelling, television, they have stopped serialized storytelling in form, which is very frustrating on this. Again, they give you so much great stuff. So that's just the overall, I never quite
Now, when you watch it as one big movie, you're just like, I kind of feel like, hour 4 of, I don't know, what's a big epic? I mean, how long's Ben-Hur? This is like 2 Ben-Hurs I watched today, but you're like, oh, this happens, and oh, that's not the whole movie. No, and then he goes here, and oh, now that's a new movie kind of in the middle of it, or like, Bridge of the River Kwai, or some of these movies where you're just like, or Dr. Zhivago, right? You're like, here's Dr. Zhivago 1, and you're like, oh, and that's kind of over, and we're past that. Now we're here, and now the whole movie's about this. This had that feel, which is really fun. It's really fun to see Star Wars from a big David Lean, type of canvas. So that was cool. It is very padded, though. However, so the hour-long thing, I feel hour-long Star Wars being an hour-long TV show. It can't escape it. When you're an hour-long format, even though these come in as short as 38 minutes, I think, and as long as 50, but it's still hour-long storytelling. When you're so with The Mandalorian, they tried to Star Wars that so well that I'm sure there's hour-long storytelling problems in that. I'm sure there's padding in that. But as I said, when I saw The Mandalorian, I could watch that guy walk down a Tatooine street all day long. Just show me the Mandalorian just walking down the street, playing that Western music, Well,
another thing with The Mandalorian is like you're saying about the hour-long thing is, as a whole, most of those episodes were on the shorter end as well, which I heard as a complaint as that season was unfolding. People kept waiting, like, oh, I hope like the next episode's longer. And I'm like, oh, they're doing what they need to do with the stories. And I really liked the length that they were, however long it needed to be. And it was quick and it was in and out. And I'm like, leave them wanting more is how I feel about stuff. I was just talking to Alex right before the show started about long movies and how I feel like people are not as efficient or like killing their darlings in the editing process anymore.
Yeah, well, and they could be longer because they're basically an entry to streaming in some ways. So it's like the 2.5 hour movie used to be a curse or death, and it's like that happens all the time now. Nobody even cares.
Yeah, that's just like if you're seeing a big movie, it's probably 2.5 hours.
Yeah, and so when it's streaming in 3 weeks, people want something longer. You want to keep them on Peacock TV longer so they don't go to something else. It's the new way of capturing people is to have the hour or a longer movie, not an hour, but more for some of these movies. So, but and I got to say the thing that I came around to with this, and I'm enjoying this. I'm living in Star Wars for the last 10 hours. I'm okay with that. Now, it doesn't feel extremely Star Wars in that one of the Star Wars formats is, ooh, who's that guy? Ooh, what's that? Wait, what planet are we on? Oh, wait, what's going on? This one gives you plenty of time to settle into every place. And it's all ends of the Star Wars universe that we have never seen before. So I love when I recognize, like, Luke is a farmer, and he didn't feel like a farmer when I saw it for the first time. Han Solo's a pirate. He didn't feel like a pirate, but it's their take on pirates. Well, now we've got like their take on corporate desk duty, like just sort some files. Like they need that guy too. Yeah. Like that is like the low ebb in episode 4 is, oh, you're a farmer, you're a pirate, you're a smuggler. You're like, here's the scumbags, here's the dirty boys of the Star Wars universe. But it's so amazing that I always, with the line when Luke goes, what a piece of junk. And I'm like, that's the coolest ship I've ever seen. What are you talking about? But it is supposed to be junk. It's just glorious junk. So I did find a lot of glory in I love that, the Empire, you watch the original trilogy, the Empire does what they need to do. You see as much of them as they need to see. They're the threat they need to be. The big bad is Darth Vader. Here, it's like, it's the corporate bureaucracy thing of it is so fascinating. What's his face? The security officer at the beginning who ends up on desk duty.
Cyril. Yeah.
Cyril. That's just like, that is this show's version of Luke Skywalker, in that Luke was in a backwater place with no options, and he's now being done the same thing. Like he rose up the corporate cop ladder, but never got to do street duty. And then he finds himself in that and pretending to be a hero, but then he gets knocked out of that. Now he's working the desk, but he still wants to solve the crime, which is a classic noir trope. So like, you know, the tropes that were exhibited in Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark and that sort of stuff, they have cousins. You know, there is the noir, there is the you know, so this movie, I'll say movie, I guess the way I watched it, has a lot of cool, like little, well, you know, there's a bank heist, there's a or not a bank heist, but you know, the vault heist.
Yeah.
You know, it's the big mission. It's the and that is like, well, and also look, I'm the host of the Ford Fiesta podcast. That is Force 10 from Navarone, when it's a dam, they have to blow it up, they have to gather the Force, the men on a mission movie. You're like, this is classic genre stuff. Like George, it's a little slow. So but and the thing about Star Wars that's so exciting is you're going everywhere. We're here, you know, with this, that going on. And it's kind of meant for the short attention span, but also meant to be like serialized. Like, all right, we're done with Jabba's. Now we're off to space. Well, now we're over here. Now we're doing this. Now we're on Endor. You know, now we're at the Death Star. Now we're cutting between the three and all that sort of stuff. That's all here. It's just spread out. So you never get these sort of like, whoa, where are we now? What are these creatures? Because you only get one of those an episode, basically. You know, so like it's like 45 minutes of like, oh, who's this? What's he flying to? Oh, well, I am in the way Star Wars works. You know, kind of confuse you. Like, why am I hanging out with two droids for 30 minutes? You know, like,
right.
They're not even human beings. There's no lead in this movie. Like, if you came in fresh on Star Wars, you'd be like, what is even happening? And then it all starts making sense, you know? This one never seeks to confuse you at all. The cash-in flashback did not work for me at all. It should have been the first episode. Here's Cash-in as a young kid. Here's it goes up. And then maybe at the end of the episode, cut to here he is as an adult. And then in the next episode, we'll head that off. That was weird. The cross-cutting many times got experimental to no end.
You bring that up and I'm like, oh yeah, those flashbacks in the beginning of the season, like for you, like those first few episodes, it's like, oh, I've not thought about those in a while. They've not done anything with them.
Well, no, it's done. They're done with those as of him. Well, that's how he gets his mother.
Marva,
so that's where that story ends, at least at that part. Obviously, we're now headed up to the funeral, so that plot line has continued, and is obviously, you know, the number one thing in Andor's life. Like Cash-in can turn off every bit of emotion except that one. And so, and basically, to be a rebel, to be on the underground, to be hardcore, and he's gotten so hardcore throughout this episode. But what a leader! Let's come back to that too, because that's like I would talk about leadership and Han Solo-ship for Andor, because but yeah, as soon as they're done with that story, which I loved, I thought that story was cool. The kid going off for the hunt for the first time, to, you know, being excited to be an adult growing up. You could tell it's almost like a bar mitzvah for the kid. You know, it's like he's with the other guys, he's putting the paint on. He's like, I'm just like you guys, even though you're like, dude, you were a kid. And if you see trauma here today, you will never walk straight again. Like, you're too young to be doing this. But, you know, on Thunderdome, the lost children.
You
know, that whole thing reminded me of that. Okay, well, here's the thing. At the top of this, like, if you don't know Star Wars, what's so cool is the first episode, you're watching it and you're on that rainy planet, and you're like, oh, this is a riff on Blade Runner. Like, would be it
feels like
out Star Wars, and I'm just like, well, let's see what this Andor movie is about. Let's assume I'm about to watch a 6-hour movie, and, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah, that you're just like, oh, this is a bit of a Blade Runner type riff. So then when it goes to the next riff, you know, not the Scottish Highlands yet, but like whatever the next riff is, you're like, if that were compressed, you would get that Star Wars feeling of like, oh wow, we were just in Blade Runner and now we're on Endor, or, you know, whatever the next environment is, and or now we're with the Lost Children, like Mad Max type vibes. So you're like, oh, well, this is switching vibes all over the place. If the problem is it just does it so slow so it can make the hour-long schedule. That's all. If you compressed all that, you'd be like, oh, that's classic Star Wars. Like, we're here, this one. Wait, what's a rebellion? Wait, what was, did he say Clone Wars? And they just moved on from the topic? You know, like, that's the way episode 4 is.
Yeah.
You know?
Leave you really like grasping at like all the different straws that are just being like scattered around. Like,
yeah,
let's dive deep into that. And this show's like, we're going to dive deep into it, and you're just going to sit back and listen.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that because I mean, ultimately, we get to all those answers anyway. Just like you fought in the Clone Wars, mentioned in episode 4, never heard from again until 2002. In which case we see the Clone Wars, and you're like, oh, here they are. For this show, the way Andor's put together, if episode 4 were put together like that, it'd be like, oh, you fought in the Clone Wars? Yes. Flashback. Like, and we're in the Clone Wars. Here's what clones are. Here's a guy that's it. And then maybe we'll come back to it later or whatever. But it's like are there any unanswered questions in Andor so far? I mean, everything's been answered.
The main thing right now,
I mean, maybe who is Saw Gerrera? We're cheating.
Yeah,
obviously. We know
like
who he
mysteries.
is. That's
like,
kind of the sort of thing. Yeah.
Where it begins is he's looking for his sister on that planet. We don't know what happened to her.
No, you're right. You're right. That's classic Star Wars of like, oh, we're never going to see what happened to her, or maybe we will eventually. But yeah.
I think there's some mystery regarding Luthen and more of Luthen's past, which I think we'll see more. It'll continue to unfold by the end. How
cool is that character?
Oh, I love him.
The
best thing on the show.
Because another classic Star Wars thing is the British former in the Luthen is it's Skarsgård, right? Is it
is Skarsgård.
I don't know the names yet, but like Governor Tarkin, you have Peter Cushing, or even at the beginning of Force Awakens, you got
Max von Sydow.
It's like that's such a classic thing. So he, of course, is the perfect gravitas for this sort of thing, and we're in the Rogue One universe here more than the Star Wars or Episode 1 or any of that. We're definitely in Rogue One territory here. He's such a perfect Rogue One character, and yet he's got that awesome austere feel of the classic British actors that they've brought in to give it that weight. And oh man, he that first scene he has with Andor, now here's the thing I have to say. As much as I've whinged a little bit about the expanded storytelling, what they fill that with is also very non-Star Wars, but really good. That conversation between him and Andor of like, and then we've gotten to know Andor at this point for an hour, I think. Like this, maybe the third episode is when Luthen comes in, right?
That's when that happens.
We've gotten to know Andor for this long time, and we've known how ruthless he's going to be. By the way, really nice ramp up on that. Like the first person he kills in this, I immediately, and I had even watched the first episode. I watched it a second time today to watch them all in a row. And I was like, oh, I don't think he's a killer yet. He's not going to kill that guy. And boom, he blows him away. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Yeah. And then I'd even seen that episode and just forgot that he's like, oh, he's pretty cold blooded from the beginning. His motivations for it tighten like a spring, but and become more stuff that we know now. We're like, oh yeah, he should be pissed about that. He should be not afraid to kill some people for that. But so when he meets Luthen, it's like you're like, he's a cold-blooded killer. This guy is he's dealing with, and then he reveals he knows exactly who he's dealing with. And in fact, his reckless way of entering it was because he had so many things stacked on his side to prevent this from going south and to get Andor on Cassian on his side. That just shows he's a really good rebel, man. What a good, and then when he returns to the ship, he puts on all the frou-frou, and then he turns and fakes a smile, and you're like, that says everything about who you have to be if you're going to also run the underground from the highest echelons. Awesome. That is just that's such good stuff, and that's the best stuff we see in some sort of prequel. This is obviously a prequel to Rogue One. Any kind of prequel thing is like when you could see the person that the rebellion is going to become, the people that are going to necessarily have to. It's just like, yeah, what does make up the rebellion? What does make up each of these types of people? Who do they each have to be? And because it's an hour-long show, they get to explore all that. So that's pretty awesome stuff. And Star Wars had just never gone this direction before. No. And it's fascinating and really good, and probably maybe one of the more important Star Wars pieces of entertainment, just because, well, there's only, you can't really do what George Lucas was doing. You got to put so much on the screen. You see the people that try and amp up to that style. Solo, a Star Wars story, tries to put as much on screen as episode 4 or 5 or 6 or even the prequels did. Same thing with Rogue One. It's like, if you're trying to tell a Star Wars style story, you're gonna have to burn the production design. You're gonna have to burn some costumes, man. There's gonna be people, you're gonna see 15 people that are the most interesting aliens you've ever seen. that's how it burnt. So, they're not going to be able to do that forever. They're not going to be able to ask unanswered questions forever if they're going to keep doing Star Wars.
No.
So this is the way to go,
Yeah, because of that, like they are doing the opposite of that, where it's like they're recycling the costumes from like the sequels and other movies and other series. I mean, like just put them in here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, right. I know. Oh, I know. So many aliens made just a brief appearance in Force Awakens or whatever. You're like, oh, it's whatever. I don't know. He's like, there's just that like one line in Force Awakens. You're like, oh, he gets a whole scene here,
Yeah.
Or two tubes. I was happy about
Yeah,
two tubes.
I
Was the
love
coolest.
tubes happening.
Two tubes is a classic example of how Rogue One is trying to be the George Lucas style, which is you see two tubes for a second, everybody else of all the partisans, and you're like, and then we're just moving on. You're like, wow, okay, that was very Star Wars to go, I want to see more of that guy. I want to see more of that guy.
That's a good, like, you bring up that point because Alex and I are fans of the books like Tales from Jabba's Palace or the Mos Eisley Cantina. I could see them doing one of those books in that style, but all about like the partisans, Saw Gerrera's partisans.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Tales from the catacombs of
Jeddah. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeddah. Yeah.
That'd be very cool. I
Tales
mean,
of
like
Jeddah.
Adam, that's a lot of what you like. I think I would agree that the show feels a little bit bloated at times, but I've been loving it. And like for a lot of those same reasons, like we haven't gotten this flavor of Star Wars before. This is new. I love that we get to take our time with something. It feels more like a novel or a longer form Star Wars extended universe.
It does.
thing.
It feels like a Star Wars book in a way, where you get cool, significant stuff. It's just, once every chapter or so. It's, the rest is kind of like set up and here's these people. But I got to tell you, I mean, for all the time, it's exactly the same as the other movies where things are referenced, and later in a prequel, we will see the wrap up to that, or, something like that. Things are referenced that like the very idea of a Mon Mothma is obviously just goes by us in Return of the Jedi or Episode 3 or whatever. You're like, oh, she's an Easter egg in those movies. Like, oh, Mon Mothma, that's that girl that talks before General Madine or after General Madine or whatever, but she has a life, and boy, what is it to start a rebellion? Like the rebellion is just thrown out as a rip-roaring adventure thing at the beginning of Empire. There's a rebellion, and who hates rebellions? Empires. Let's go, kids. And that's it. That's it. Nobody's getting into the life of Tarkin. As soon as Tarkin leaves that scene, that's where Andor picks up. You never see a long, what have I become? You're going to get that in Andor. You're going to get that moment where they look in the mirror and say, what have I become? So, and yet, that moment's there. Everybody in that room, Wolf Yularen in that room with Tarkin, he's leaving. He's going to a room. He's, shaving. We never see any of that. Nobody pees in Star Wars. I'm shocked nobody's peed in this show yet.
I think somebody did pee in this show, didn't they?
Did they? We've seen a toilet. I don't know if we've seen it used.
That's a first. But obviously there are prisons, and we get a little of the prison vibe in Episode 4, which is fun. There's a bit of a jailbreak type thing, but this is a real, much like we've got a heist before, but when you saw Solo, a Star Wars story, now you've seen a full train heist, cowboy style, pew, 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 pew. This is the same thing with like Prison Break. What does a Star Wars prison break look like? There's got to be prisons. We've literally never seen one. We've seen detention centers, but we've never seen a Star Wars. Well, I guess we see Jyn Erso, but briefly, and that sort of thing. But it's like, what is a prison break? And then the leadership of Cassian is so fascinating. The way he rallies people to his cause, and I would have to watch a second time to realize. I'm assuming it's for his own personal cause at the moment that just happens to fit into the overall causes of everyone he comes across. Yeah. But he's such an organizer, and I love the way he turns around Andy Serkis to make him. Because he recognizes leadership. There's so much. It's really, I kind of wish I could see the Princess Leia movie that was exactly the form of Andor, where you just see how she develops her leadership. Because you see what he's doing here, and you're like, Princess Leia must have done that on the regular. Like she must have walked into a room and had someone be like, "Oh, who do you think you are?" And by the end of it, it's like, "Whatever you say, ma'am. Yes, absolutely. I'll get that guy on." Like just and not even like, I mean, she barks orders and stuff and that, and she's tough. But I just have a feeling that she really could work the situation.
Yeah.
But you see so much of that in this. There's so much politics in this. If the people that hated all the politics in Phantom Menace were not the age that's loving Andor, they would hate Andor. like it's like, you thought that was a lot of politics, and then you rewatch Phantom Menace and you're like, it's like 2 minutes, guys. It's like maybe 5 if you include the outer conversations, but like we're in the Senate for maybe 2 minutes, 1 minute twice, and then the rest, it's like, but this one, it's like, oh, you're in it. I mean, it kind of makes it one of the more like, no, they're going full in on the Senate stuff. I mean, there's Senate scenes, but the backdoor dealings, the tiny dealings is what everybody's doing here. But you could see it's such a house of cards too. Tiny, very conservative dealings. You go to the museum store and you talk about an art piece, and then you discuss 3 things in the back room. Then you're back out on the street. Nobody's the wiser. And then they catch up to Mon Mothma's financing, because of course they would have to necessarily. If you're funding something, that money's going away. If you're not careful with it, that's how everybody gets busted. That's how Al Capone gets busted, So it's just such an interesting thread, and it puts the suspense way over here in a weird way, as opposed to the suspense of Star Wars, which is like here, and then here, real quick, and then down the hallway. Oh no, here they come. That's the suspense in Star Wars. But this one, it's like it's the long cello note. It's not the bum 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 bum. It's the bum. It's like a big difference. So
no. All of that.
So that's Andor.
That's
what do you guys think? You're gonna be the first opinions I've heard of it. What did you think as you were going along in the episode? Because I think we all admit 11's filler, right? It goes back to my main thesis statement.
Well, like
you're here to talk 11, but 11 was
being
filler.
able to just hang out. Like I didn't feel like this episode was
a hangout
filler. This episode felt like the episode leading up to the jailbreak episode, even maybe.
Then episode 5 as well is like, I think the slowest of the season thus far. And that's right before they do the heist. And that's where they're getting that all set up.
Coiled spring. They know they got the heist in the next episode. They do this on a few of the Disney Plus shows. They go, we know the next episode's a big kick-ass one where you get Luke Skywalker. We could chill out for a second in this episode.
And like the story, the pacing of the show is at times laconic, but like I dig it, and
it's all good. It's all good stuff.
I like it. This episode would probably have played better had you been able to watch episode 12 immediately following it. Had we all?
Oh yeah, that would have made it the complete experience.
But I
can put myself in the headspace now that I've done this. Like next episode, it'd be exciting to still see.
Yeah, and I liked all the little just stuff. I mean, like this was like a very unlikely avenue to get one of our, because we haven't seen a lot of aliens in this show, and that's something that I think people have been talking about on the.
It's all about people. This one,
and but we got like a really great, cool, weird alien scene in this episode. Kind of out of nowhere that I really loved.
That was classic Star Wars.
Yeah. That was very classic Star Wars.
And the way that they speak,
the
whole I
love that.
I watched it again with subtitles, and I'm like, I was able to actually follow this.
Yeah,
where it goes to what Adam, what you're talking about, where it's like you're having a hard time following something because it's moving so fast, or the aliens are talking in a way that doesn't quite make sense to you. So I did like that about that scene.
Yeah.
I did like the design of the lead alien more than the other guy with a more human-esque face. Because it didn't seem as animated.
Like a hand that was a cleaver.
Yes.
Oh, right. He was almost like a face in a weird way. Like it's like, but if you made it a Gamorrean guard with humans for like 3 generations, you might get that guy. The nose would get a little shrink,
And also, I had this thought: did everybody on Space Miami get arrested, except for like
Space
the
Miami.
2 people that are crashing in the place that Andor used to crash in?
Did that happen in this episode?
Well, like
he goes back there.
He goes back.
Yeah, he went back there, and
gets
he was
stuff.
with the. Yeah.
But the only people we saw, like when we were there before, there were just like people around.
Very populated.
And it like there were people hanging out on the beach.
Right.
And it was like a touristy thing. And now there's like no one. Like, did everyone get arrested? Angela had that thought.
Oh, interesting. You're right, because there's a very clearly a shot of the beach with nobody on
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's like one other person hanging out by the space payphones at the end of the episode.
Yeah. Arrest all the people having a good time. Get them out of there.
This must have been noted when they cut to Space Miami for the first time, and I'm thinking, what's that, episode 6 or so?
7. 6 was the heist, so 7. Yeah.
Okay, so the opening of the TV show Miami Vice is a shot along the ocean with flamingos flying. This one is a shot along the beach with blue alien creatures flying with exactly a yawn. That's been noted, right? That's a totally not just Space Miami, but Space Miami Vice.
Yeah,
the opening to the show. You know, that was amazing.
Oh man, I actually did not
the
know
name
that.
of that
I'm sure it's been
planet.
noted online, but I wasn't aware of that. I don't read a lot of discourse about the show either because I'm just enjoying it. So like, why bother?
Because who gives a shit?
Yeah,
I mean, really, I mean, you know, we've got really good, smart movie friends. I love reading their opinions once I'm caught up on something or whatever. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if one of my friends makes an, you know, and if I read, you know, a noted source or whatever that thinks this or that about the movie, and I go, I hard disagree. My reaction is still like, I guess I read some words. Okay. You know, I mean, it just is like, I just do not care what people think about movies largely. And I don't mind if they don't care what I think about movies. Hopefully I can give a little peppering and flavoring to it, but I'm not here to change.
Sure. What else happened? What else is going on in this? Mon Mothma is going to marry off her kid. Oh, sorry. Did you have more on that?
I was going to go back to the alien scene.
Oh, let's go back to that.
Yeah, they are escaping in a quad jumper, which is what Rey and Finn were going to attempt to escape in The Force Awakens.
And I love when you're kind of robbed of something in a previous movie, and because we never got to see the quad jumper fly, it blows up, and you're like, but you know, that's again classic Star Wars quad jumper. What the hell's a quad jumper? Well, now it's blown up. Now I'll never find out, you know. And so then you're like, oh, I get to see one fly now. That's always the kind of it's almost like the Crimson Guard or the Red Guards for the Emperor when those action figures came out before the movie came out. And so we're like, I can't wait to see what badass things these guys do in the movie. And then they just turn around and leave. With leaving action, you squeeze the legs together and they leave. But Ryan Johnson, when he put the Praetorian Guard, you're like, yes, there is a kid that was disappointed that they didn't. All the battles himself. You know, we had all the battles of the action figures ourselves, you know, so they did all kinds of cool stuff in my toys, but nothing in the movie.
Yeah, the same thing with the Boba Fett mail away before Empire Strikes Back. As integral as that character is, like action wise, he doesn't do a lot.
No, he's on screen for 2 minutes, but he was on screen for 2 years when you were a kid and you got it in the mail.
I remember for the Phantom Menace, like the preview figure they had was for Rico Lee. And then we got to see everything Rico Lee did.
Who has more lines, Boba Fett or Rico Lee?
Ooh.
That's a good. I think Rico Lee, just because he has to deliver a little bit more exposition, just regarding the ship and how it works.
Well, of course, regarding the planet Coruscant.
Yeah, and that
entire planet is one big city.
Thanks for the info, guy.
Travis, what's the name of Rico Lee's droid?
Ooh. No, I don't know that.
Used to know it. I know all that dumb stuff we used to know. I can't remember now. That is the one that they put out as an action figure, though. It's a green one.
They did. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they were like, and you're like, oh, this is the big new droid from Phantom Menace. And really, he's the TC-14 of Astromech in that movie, I think. Familiar, brief appearance.
Yeah,
it's true.
But when they get caught by the two aliens there who are having whatever job, that's the most Star Wars feeling thing because they're running these weird web nets fire out at them. It's almost like on Andor, you're like, oh, I don't even know where we're at or what this technology that just captured them is or who these guys are. So you really are in that mystery space that felt very Star Wars at that moment. And then right after that is a Star Destroyer a new type of one overtaking a small ship and tractor beam and all that stuff. I'm like,
yeah, this got
real Star Wars real quick, man.
That was a real winner of a scene. Because like this show didn't really feel like it ever had a place for a good star battle.
Right.
Which is fine. It just didn't feel like this was the show for that. But the fact that we got that wedged in here, and that it was like a kind of inventive for Star Wars space battle. It featured a lot of stuff we hadn't seen before, but felt very plausible within the universe. I love this scene. That was a great scene.
Yeah, that's a standout for me as far as scenes in this episode.
Yeah, it's good suspense. That suspense of like, you're a rebel, you are in so much trouble if they catch you. So much trouble. And then the suspense of like, well, it's an older code word, sir, but it does check out, you know, that sort of thing. Fly casual. He's flying casual,
Flying casual.
This is a tradition. So yeah, that all felt this felt like a very Star Wars episode, actually.
Yeah.
The big inhale before the next episode,
For sure.
Yeah. I love the design of the Star Destroyer as well, because it's a new one. However, it's very old because it's based on concept art that they were doing for the original Star Wars before even Ralph McQuarrie made one. That's what this ship is based on.
I was reading about that. It was designed, if I'm correct, it was designed by Colin Cantwell, which is why this is the Cantwell class Star Destroyer.
Oh, nice. I didn't catch it. I caught they named the class and I was like, oh, at one time I'd have to have the subtitles on and writing that down, but I was like, I'll go back and check it later. But the Cantwell class.
Yeah. And the design of it was so cool. This does do one thing that I don't like, which is like a very Star Wars thing, because it's always, abilities and things we see are always a matter of like what serves that scene, and it's never a matter of like what makes sense and will be used repeatedly within the larger universe. But just like straight up projectiles against, again, not energy weapons of some kind against like Imperial hardware. Like that seems like a friggin' genius move. I can't believe we haven't seen it in Star Wars before. And they have no defense for not using that kind of thing more during the rebellion. Maybe we see more of it in season 2, but I mean, like, I think that's like a really ingenious thing. That's just one of those things. I'm like, why isn't this all the time? Like, why don't?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's the same thing as like what the Holdo maneuver in The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
right.
No one ever thought of hyperspacing, like suicide hyperspacing through a ship. No one ever thought of this. And Mandalorian has things like that too. I can't remember when now exactly, but that happens a few times in Mando too, where like someone has some tool where it's just like, why doesn't everybody have this thing? This seems like this should be a standard issue device.
Well, someone at work the other day brought that up to me about the Holdo maneuver, and he's like, theoretically, like, they don't have to make Death Stars. If you just like flew any ship at light speed into a planet, wouldn't it kind of decimate it? I'm like, this is true. I don't know what to say to that.
It's true. Yeah, no. At that point you're like, it's just a movie, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
You just launch an unmanned thing through hyperspace into a planet. Yeah,
I mean, they still have to make a movie.
Yeah.
Like you're like, well, we had a version where they solved everything in 10 minutes. Didn't test well. They just flew everything in light speed through everything else, and that was the end of the movie.
It's just a symptom of it's just a symptom of sci-fi storytelling. It's just fun to pick apart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Love.
But it's always fun. They're coming up with new stuff like that, all the time. You're like, oh, that's a cool way to get it. Or even just the very idea of a prison, or the very idea of, the wandering tribes, or all the different factions. Like the idea of a rebellion was not anything you even thought about with Star Wars. You're like, I don't know, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, let's do this thing. The idea of like how a rebellion comes together, and then Phantom Menace in the prequel trilogy goes way before they have to fight it. So we've never really talked about it or seen it. It's slowly been put together over time and referenced, but this is the first time we're really seeing like, how do you get a rebellion together? How do you get all these factions and everything like that? And what are all their individual stories? What's his story? What's his story? What's his story? So it's pretty good Star Wars stuff. It is fun to hang out in this world,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's the rebellion in the first movie in particular is just symbolic of the call to adventure. And it's just interesting to see, like you say, like, let's flesh it out. What would that actually look like in this world that we've put together?
Put the wars in Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars is not a meditation on that. It's just a ripping yarn. That's just what underlines everything. That's what those are the toadstools it skips over to get to better adventure. So it is interesting to go, well, if episode 4 exists, necessarily these things must have happened before it. And that was the great brain exercise of having a movie that has so much that happens before it that it just references or you're never going to see. That was just like such radical lived in, the used universe thing.
Right.
They talk about the old crappy ships, the used universe, but it's also a used universe in that people are like, oh, you fought in the Clone Wars? Yeah. And I'm not going to go into any detail about what that was. So here's a lightsaber. Yeah. You've heard of the Force, right? All right, let's get to the cantina. You're like, wait a second. That's Star Wars, but yeah.
For sure.
But which I always think it's funny because people go, oh, these mythologies have gotten too long, too dense, And with Star Wars, I have to laugh at that. Well, even Marvel, I have to laugh at that. I'm like, dude, the comic books, you have no idea. You are such a wuss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wuss. Like, welcome to comic books movie making for the first time ever. Like, up until Marvel, nobody was adapting comic books, which is odd because that's what they're supposed, it's almost like we decided to set our Western in the West. Ooh, what are they doing over there at Marvel? Our underwater Westerns ain't selling. But anyway, but I forgot, I'm off topic. Oh no, but the Star Wars idea, this like used universe is like, it's used in what they talk about that happened for the movies, but if someone sat down with episode 4 right now, knowing that it's what's funny is that was the first Star Wars movie. That's episode 4. It would have the exact effect now of someone who was just coming to Star Wars going, well, I'll watch the first one. And then they're referring to all these things from the prequel trilogy, even though in 1977, they weren't. Because those things, but now people are like, oh, I got to watch all those first. Look, I can't get into these big mythologies. But in 1977, there was only one. But now it would give you the same feeling of like, oh, what are they talking about? Oh my God, there's just too much to know. I haven't watched the other movies, but you don't really have to. That's
absolutely, yeah. The jumping off point. That's another thing that this show is trying to really sell hard is it's trying to get people who are not into Star Wars to the point that even this past week, Star Wars and like Disney announced, hey, we're going to be airing Andor on ABC this week.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
To watch
the first 2 episodes. They're going to put it on ABC and Hulu.
Why the first 2? It's a terrible cliffhanger.
I know it should be the first 3. It's a
should
first
edit the first 4
ABC.
down to 50 minutes.
Yeah, and then it goes to FX and then Hulu and stuff.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll ever edit these down to movies. It would be so fascinating to see a lot of the fat cut out of this.
Oh, the internet will.
Yeah.
Kevin Smets will.
Smets will get to it. But it's like I had the Lord of the Rings box sets, which were the 4-hour versions. But I also had the other version that you could watch that was just the 2-hour version. And I feel like I have skipped the Andor I would have seen in theaters to watch the big box set, Peter Jackson box set. That's what I just watched, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a very different feel because it's a long, if you watch all of the Peter Jackson, I guess if you watch the Peter Jackson complete all 3 4-hour Lord of the Rings, it's about this long. So
that's
it's
pretty much
kind of cool. Yeah. And a lot of walking in this too. That's the thing. They're like, not enough walking in Star Wars. We saw how much kids freaked out over Lord of the Rings. Get some walking in Star Wars.
There is a lot of walking in this show.
Each have some time to walk there and see the ruins of the Death Star.
Yeah. You also got to see a conflicted Andy Serkis character have to make a choice.
Not since 24-Hour Party People have we. Yeah. Oh no. Oh, I guess Lord of the Rings.
I thought it was funny how he was. Travis, I know you skip the recaps, right, Trav?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it depends on which viewing I'm on.
Did you watch this one?
I did.
Okay,
yeah,
so
I watched it on either the first or
I'll
second.
never watch them again. I'll never watch them because this one I had them all queued up 227 all the way. So as soon as I was done with one, I'd back out to the menu and hit it, and it would start right after the Andor title.
Nice.
That's how I watched each one of them. To make it look like one big thing.
Oh,
I'll never watch.
nice.
I'll never watch the recaps again because they point at very specific things.
Yeah.
You're like, that bottle cap from episode 1, is that going to come into this one? And then I'm like watching for it. I'm like,
that's what Travis was saying last week. Why he doesn't generally watch them. I just thought it was funny that Andy Serkis was absent from the recap version of the scene where they're jumping into the ocean out of the prison.
Oh. Because this episode's just about the other two guys.
Yeah, it's just about those two guys who got away.
And also, like, again, to this point that you have, Adam, about like this being so like long and drawn out, as opposed to like the rest of Star Wars, or even just like the heart of it, which is the movies, is the reveal of the title in every episode. I think it's like a pretty long,
it is
drawn
very
out
long
thing.
And it's on purpose, obviously, because
for sure.
one way to get people's attention would be words, backstory. Oh my God, there's a ship going on. You know, that's one way to get people's attention. This one's like planet, another planet, sides of letters. They're turning slowly. You know, but it also looks like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
It does, yeah.
It is. 2001 is not, hey kids, get in here, pew 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 pew. It's slow gravitas, long storytelling, segmented storytelling, all this sort of stuff. So it's like the opening Andor thing is like, no, this isn't Star Wars. This is back to 2001 a little bit, but obviously a very different story than 2001. But that is so purposeful that the very opening is 2001-esque because that's a slow space story. You know, very different story, but very you know, paced and more of a lyrical opera and these big operatic segments and stuff. This movie could have used a single piece of good music. This Andor, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's a gripe I kind of have too.
They should have written some. I don't know. They should have just written some music. I don't know. I don't remember any. Was there music in any of that?
There's tones.
Yeah, there was. Oh, Miami Vice. There was the Miami Vice opening. I remember that.
Yeah, the Miami Vice one is the one that
Miami
sticks out the most. Yeah.
I gotta go back and listen to that because they hit exactly the same
space Cuban beats.
Yeah.
In this episode, also one of my favorite things was B2 Emo living up to his name. The saddest little droid. Oh my God.
There's something black hole about that droid. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Black hole.
Yeah.
Remember old Bob or Vincent? They tried to make cute droids after Star Wars and everybody failed because somehow Star Wars was just spinning miracles.
Well, also silent running too, kind of.
Silent running, right? Yeah, dull droids.
Yeah. What poor guy. He's just like a little.
I know.
He's just like a little sad puppy.
Yeah, what do you guys think of, you know, when you get if you don't get a droid, it's not a Star Wars movie. You got to have a droid.
Right.
So this is the new droid. You know, there's a lot of things like that where you're like, well, if you don't get this, then it doesn't really feel like a Star Wars movie. So we have a new droid. What do we think of this droid?
I really love him. I just wish we'd
kind of cool.
seen more of him.
Yeah.
Because we've not seen him for the majority of the season. I loved his introduction. I love that scene between him and Cassian, where Cassian is asking him to lie about stuff, and he's like,
"Right?
Do I have enough power for that?"
Yeah. Right.
The most power this droid uses power as an excuse for like literally everything it doesn't want to do. It's so cute. No, I really like him, and I really like using this little droid to continue to push the question of like sentience and autonomy in droids. You know, because like, it seems like this droid, like, you know, this droid thinks and feels. It can't deal with certain things due to power limitations or whatever. But like, it seems to be a little, you know, it seems to be a really emotional little being that is, you know, who knows how old. Like, I'm sure like R2 is the same way, or a similar way, because he's never had his memory wiped, right?
Right.
So these droids with longer memories like tend to develop these personality quirks and stuff like that, and I love that being explored with this weird little droid. And yeah, like Travis said, I would love to have seen more of him.
I like that the droid has gotten more unwieldy, because when they got to BB-8, you're like, oh, that's because the question is in 77, you go, how's R2 get downstairs?
Right.
And you know, and long before the jets or whatever. And I feel like there's a shot, but I used to watch that in square format with the sides cut off, because that's how you had it. And when it finally went to letterbox, there's R2 in episode 4 is like going like that down the stairs when they first go to the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah,
you could just see it for a second.
Yeah,
and maybe it's a special edition thing too.
Yeah, it was like the maneuver was like he would take his back leg to like lean back against the stair behind him and then like lower onto the next two stairs with his front two legs.
And
but
like, they solved that problem so much that like BB-8 can get anywhere.
Yeah, just make him a ball that can go wherever.
Well, and then give him the tether cables that he can just like pull out.
He can do anything. Right.
Yeah.
And so that like solves all those problems. And he's a cool droid. That's a cool advancement. I love this one going like way backwards. Of, like there's places R2 can get that this thing can't even like look at. Like, nah, I ain't going there. He's a homebody droid.
Yeah, he's like less maneuverable than like a Treadwell droid.
Yeah. He really is. Yeah, Treadwell at least has tank tracks, you know, to get over things. But it makes him cuter. I like the way they articulate the body a little bit. So he has like a dome like R2, but it's an articulated dome. So when he like when Cassian's teaching him to lie, which I mean, what a that is the most Andor scene I could imagine. Cassian teaches a robot to lie because he's such a liar, because he's done, you know, he's always like, he's just on the run. Always, everything's a lie. Everything's a cover. That's like the life he lives. And that's how they build up suspense using the long format as well, is like, he is constantly burying himself deeper and deeper and deeper. And now he's got all these level of lies. If one thing falls, then the rest falls and he's caught, you know? But yeah, teaching a droid to lie, and the conversation he has with his friend at the construction site. This is the key of what Tony Gilroy does amazingly well. When he walks up to him and just said, got a little drunk. I said I had a bottle. I mean, he doesn't go, I need you to lie for me. He just walks up, and that's like literally how he talks to a friend. That's how much lying Andor does. That's how duplicitous a life he has. No hi, no hello. Last night we were drinking, you know, like what'd you do, Andor? And the guy's like, and then when the guy repeats it back to him, but like friendly, and you can tell that he's covering because they are friends, even though they said nothing friend-like in that. In the genre, at least the genre, the Rogue One genre in a way, you know.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And I like that character coming back too. In a minor way.
And again, you got a construction site guy, you know, like it's the scuzzy jobs. Nobody wants to pick up the trash, you know. So Star Wars is about the used universe guys. Every other sci-fi thing before Star Wars was about the captain on the big ship, and you know, like, and this is like, here's a farmer, here's a guy that owes money, so he can't really show his face. People try to kill him. Here's a guy that was the greatest like wizard champion, but that's a long time ago. He's old now, you know. So it's just like, that's just a classic Star Wars of like, in this show has that all over the place, from like the corporate lackey to like the cop lackey to, you know, I mean, even Mon Mothma's, she's not, I mean, she's just a representative of Chandrilla. There's a million other people. I mean, she's not like
the most esteemed person. Not at all.
And she's even under the thumb of other Chandrillans too, that come through and just tell her what's what. And you're like, oh shit, she really didn't have any leverage.
No.
You know, the guy's like,
in this
and my daughter would like to, and my son would like to marry your daughter also. And you're like, oh God, that's going on.
And like it's so interesting, that aspect of her. And like, you know, we see her meet with her, you know, cousin, and they're talking about it, how her daughter's like really into like the Chandrillan ways, which they're both like, oh, we don't like this stuff. Right. And I think it's like
when the atheist parents, like, their kids go get baptized by themselves, or their kids go get baptized by themselves, like when they're teenagers.
It's such an interesting thing like that. And the whole, like, they don't like Chandrilla, it seems like. And that's, I don't know, that's just interesting to me, because I know like later on, like for a brief period, the New Republic, this is, you know, expanded universe stuff, it's based in Chandrilla with Mon Mothma there for a while. So it's just interesting stuff.
This is the first exploration we've ever gotten of Mon Mothma in any of the series. She appears she appears here and there, but it's an Easter egg. This is not an Easter egg. And so I think Chandrilla also, it's what's fun about that is like, there's really, I mean, only maybe in the books, I wouldn't know, but like, it gets to stand in for all the high societies in a weird way of how they're screwed up, but they wouldn't do that to Alderaan, you know, like they wouldn't go, and Alderaan's full of a bunch of inbred royals or whatever, but like Chandrilla, there's like overly weird old school arranged marriage.
Yeah.
Like it ain't cool. Everybody wears crowns and stuff, but it ain't cool, as opposed to like Alderaan, where it's like people wear crowns, but they really are just helping the people and that sort of thing, So Chandrila gets to be a bit of a shit because it's in the Andor universe. Like everything's shit.
Yeah. That's where Kylo Ren was born. So that's where
Chandrila?
Yeah.
Oh.
That was one of those facts that I learned while studying characters. I'm like, so Kylo Ren's home planet. Chandrila was born there.
So they settled down on Chandrila for a while?
They do, yeah.
Interesting.
You mentioned Kylo Ren. That's a note I made during this as well, is that the radical thing about the sequel trilogy is we, in the original trilogy, we get to see Darth Vader show up. He is his presence, but a little goes a long way. We never spend any time with him. Just a moment when he's meditating before the Imperial officer comes in is all we get. The moment before the Imperial officer is choked and gives the bad information is all we get with that. But those people had whole lives. And I do love that Andor is like, now we're going to spend time with all of these just little, it's like if you shot the wide shot of the room with all the people at it in episode 4, and you're like, that guy, we're going to follow that guy back to his house and tell you what he did all day long. Yeah. That's kind of what Andor's doing, on a more exciting level than that, obviously. But like, it is fascinating of like, yeah, okay, what is Mon Mothma? What are her problems? Like suddenly people have kids and stuff in this. And, it just takes that one extra step back from, it's almost, you can imagine this is the off-screen time. You can imagine almost in any of these scenes, except for the really exciting ones, where when they exit frame, something more exciting in a Star Wars movie happens with them.
Ooh, yeah.
Like almost all of this is noises off of like this is what the discussion, and then she goes and has the great scene, from Revenge of the Sith or whatever,
This is the behind closed doors of Star Wars. Yeah. This is the, strained parental relationships and rough marriages and Cyril not going anywhere he wants to in his career and life, and he's living with his mother.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, think about that. Not the henpeck son, but like the type of mom who would henpeck her son, type thing. Like you've never seen that stereotype or archetype in Star Wars, and it's like, but it's a thing, and we know it is, and like, oh, well, now I'm seeing it in a cool Star Wars dwelling, and the architecture and the production design in this show. How about this, huh? The design of all the places is just incredible.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that initial cop station, I was like, Ken Adam from the James Bond movies, like and Dr. Strangelove. It was such a Ken Adam style production design. I mean, it's all all the arches and all this sort of, it's really incredible design in this thing. It's really fun to look at and hang out. And then in Mon Mothma's couch. I mean, who doesn't want Mon Mothma's couch in their house, right? In a sunken living room, A-okay. They got the chandelier. Oh man. And just the seething, pretend nice conversations happening all through this. That's a level of drama Star Wars had never had before.
For sure.
Phony. How everybody has to be a phony. Whether it's Andor, he has to lie about everything. Of course, he killed a guy. He stole this. He stole that. He screwed that guy over. He's got to lie about all that stuff. That's why he's training a droid to lie. On Mothma, obviously for good reason, you put on a good face and then you start the rebellion. Very duplicitous Star Wars. It's a nuance that Star Wars has never had time for, really.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And now it has too much time for it. No, I'm kidding. It's but more than usual.
Yeah, there's no one in the show that has the freedom to just exist and just not be duplicitous at all. I'm trying to think of a single character who is
straight faced.
Yeah, just like
telling it straight.
Yeah, but I don't think there's a single one.
No. And that's very Star Wars. That's cool. That's spy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget
that's
spy stuff.
That's how this was sold, right? A spy show.
Yeah.
So
oh yeah.
Yeah, that tracks.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, you only get a little bit of spycraft in the original movies where somebody's undercover for a second, but it's more just, and then all hell breaks loose, Yeah. And there's danger at that moment. You don't really feel it in Force Awakens when they're sneaking around the base. You're like, all right, it's just cool to watch them sneak around the base, but like, I'm not feeling suspense. This, it's like, you could tell Tony Gilroy's like that suspense of you might get discovered because you infiltrated the Death Star for 11 hours on various forms of terrain, and like that suspense throughout this entire thing is what it's all about, which is really cool. And they have such a great blank slate in Andor. We don't know anything about Andor. Andor was in Rogue One for a minute, and most of him was edited out.
Yeah.
I mean, he's more than a minute. He's in most of the movie, but I'm just saying, like, it scratches the surface the way Star Wars always has, which is like, oh, there's a lot more to know about Andor, but we gotta move. And so he's such a blank slate. There's nothing you could do wrong. You can't go, I mean, no fan's gonna go, wait, his mother wasn't a blah blah blah, but if you do it with Han Solo, you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's also interesting with the main lead character in the show of Andor, that we know that he's lying and he's duplicitous, but there's not a whole lot, like, they have not developed his character like nearly as much as like what we've seen with like Luthen and stuff. He's still almost a bit of a blank canvas to a degree, because
that is within the tradition of Star Wars too. It's like there's still a lot we don't know. Like he's still, we're really watching a month in his life, maybe, or 3 weeks in his life. You're like, wow, he's got a lot coming.
It's for sure. Like in this season, Adam, is the first year. And Tony Gilroy said the next season, because it's only going to be 24 episodes, but the next season we are going to see the next, like, year 2, 3, 4, and 5, like in like rapid succession. So we'll see if like things pick up in pace in that regard.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Well, I wonder if we'll get like General Draven or even a younger Jyn Erso or something as when they've proven they can cut back and forth between the plot lines. You don't have to have Andor meet Jyn until Rogue One, but based on this, I mean, flashbacks don't feel very Star Wars to begin with. That's a tough sell. So just tell that as part of the story and then don't flashback. But they could have a Jyn section, and a Andor section would be kind of cool too. Obviously we want to see him meet K2SO.
Yeah.
Do you think
that fun?
Go. That could happen, like maybe even near the end of this season, maybe at the last episode, because I was reminded he is right now. He's on the planet where we saw like the first, X2SO. Yeah, that we saw those droids on this planet before. So, but I guess
that's the planet the funeral is taking place on, is where, because the Empire's built up their presence from episode 1 till now on that planet. Every time they cut back to that planet, you're like, there's more guards in the street, there's more Imperials in the street. You're like, this is becoming a fully locked down Imperial site now.
Ferrix, but specifically like the Miami Vice planet, the that's where he like almost got choked to death.
Right.
So
and short
the planet that he's on right now, you're saying. Oh, interesting. That'd be interesting.
Gotcha. I like seeing shore troopers. They're pretty cool.
Yeah. I like that too.
I guess those are the Miami Vice police officers of the Empire.
It is true.
You guys think if season 2 does well and they're trying to do another one of these kind of shows, they'll make a many Bothans show? I think we'll get 12 episodes about each of the many Bothans.
We could. That would be between.
It'd be between Empire and Jedi.
Yeah.
Be like immediately. That'd take place over a very short period of time. But I mean, like, that's a story that we don't know, right? Has that been?
Oh yeah.
Is that in a novel?
No.
Is that in a?
That's one of those lines of dialogue, like Adam was saying, that's like filled with like, what's that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. A Star Wars tradition. And yet, if you look at what happens in Andor here, you're like, you're going to find out where the Bothans are from, what their politics are, who's the best Bothan, who's the worst Bothan, who's the Bothan that got the plans, how was he friends with Mon Mothma, what does she do to get to the Bothans,
do any of the Bothans survive? Is there one Bothan that's just like in a bacta tank that lived and like
the last of the Bothans?
Yeah, and then that Bothan can cross over with Mando in season 5 or something.
How cool would this be too? Because you call it the last of the Bothan spies. So one of them survived, and that's, you could have the part of the story be about that. You could have how the Bothans, what if Bothans are, because, like each of these creatures sort of has an environment they belong in or whatever. These are the swimming creatures. These are the whatever. What if the Bothans are just natural spies? Like everything they do is somehow like, cool. Like if you took the idea of the duplicitousness in this show and you go, there's a species that just does that from birth, and therefore they get them as spies because the way they absorb things, the way like how good they are socially, like nobody can unbefriend a Bothan no matter what, like just because they have this weird power of influence, and like then you like the Bothans in the Senate and they always get their interesting. And she says many Bothans died. Of course, they had all the plans. They're the best spies in the universe. But a lot of people were like, "Oh, thank God, can't kill enough Bothans. These guys, you can't trust them."
That'd be interesting. No, like this episode goes into the whole like, oh, this species only does this one thing. Where when Andor goes back to the hotel room where he had the stuff stashed, we see a Bluetopian sleeping on the bed, which is which is what we see Jyn Erso sharing her cell with in Rogue One, and it's sleeping there. I'm sure they just use the exact same model again. They're like, what can this thing do? We built it to sleep. All right, put it in a bed.
Get out the sleeping alien. Find the one that sleeps.
Finally, just like I said, classic Star Wars. In Rogue One, you see the Bluetopian for a second, and you're like, "Oh, I'd like to see more about what he does besides sleep." And they're like, "We're gonna have an appearance in Andor. What's he doing? Well, he's sleeping." But just a little more Bluetopian.
Ooh.
What else should we talk about? Hey, you guys want to talk about Star Wars?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Here's something I wanted to bring up earlier. If we need a new topic here. Andor as Han Solo is for example, Han Solo, again, you have to be told more than feel a lot of times that he's on the run. He owes a lot of money to a lot of people. He's always in trouble. You get that feel in Star Wars. Obviously, he gets wrapped up in a lot of other adventures and stuff. You don't feel it as much. And then ultimately they killed Jabba, and now he's kind of off the hook. So in Return of the Jedi, he doesn't owe owe anything to anybody. It's not very Han Solo in a certain way. Solo, a Star Wars story, and Force and want to firmly put Han Solo in that owes money all around town. Everybody's like, "Oh, hey, Tasu Leech, good to see you." That's a really perfect Han Solo, but we never get the drama of that. It's always played for fun or just a peppering on a rip roaring, character, Harrison Ford character. Here, I felt like, because in Rogue One, well, never mind. In this though, he is Han Solo type. He's living the hardcore Han Solo life, which we get off light on in the other Star Wars movies, because we don't really want Han Solo to go, "I'm going to put a gun to my head. I owe those money," but Andor's not afraid to go there of like, it's a rough life to be on the run from this and that and this and that, and that guy knows this, so you got to lie to that guy about that,
and constantly telling and living the lies. It's because when Han Solo lies, and that whole The Force Awakens scene, it's fun. It's like, fun. He's lied and he's bullshitted his way out of everything.
Whereas and it's classic Han Solo, so we're we're enjoying it.
It's like, oh, this is depressing and oppressing, and it's like Breaking Bad. It's Walter White like lying about everything, and you're like, oh, this is hard to watch.
Yeah, so there's kind of like, there's a lot of things like that in Andor where it's like, oh, that littlest of archetype there, I recognize that from Star Wars, and they've just taken the Star Wars is the beginning of the funnel part of it. You see this little bit of Han Solo here, but Andor is like, well, if you were going to live that Han Solo life, it would have this many problems, and you'd feel this much pressure, and also it's like, there's the old thing of like Han Solo, like, "Oh, come join the rebellion." "Nah, I'm in this for myself." Of course he comes to save the day. "Nah, I'm in it for myself." Oh, now he's got to get Princess Leia off of Hoth. Like he gets wrapped back up into it, but he's always like, "Nah, I'm a rogue. I'm all by myself." Like Andor never has to quite have that conversation, because he's trying to get out of all this trouble. He doesn't want more trouble. He doesn't want to be part of the rebellion. Nobody quite asks the question of like, "Hey, I see a hero in you, join the rebellion." But it's there, that sort of thing. And he ends up aiding the rebellion for his own needs, which brings him into the circle of the rebellion. And that is one of the advantages of doing this over 11 hours, is because the conversation whereby someone changes their personality they've set up for 90 minutes to be a different person to aid the plot in victory is often often a short path.
Yeah.
And you go, I don't believe that. That's why in the superhero movies you have the, hey, Venom, you and I should team up to beat Spider-Man. If they were telling it over 11 hours, they would naturally intersect here and disagree and intersect here. And then they would end up, fighting Spider-Man or whatever. When you do that in a 2-hour movie, it's always got to be briefer. And so here you get that over a nice, tasty amount of time. You live the life. You really live the life in this because you're just spending so much time in the down moments. It's finally a Star Wars universe where somebody pees, it's like there's human beings just doing human being shit. There's the guy with the shit office job in Star Wars now is a character.
I love that so much.
Pretty cool. Yeah. With a nagging mother. We the very first nagging mother in Star Wars history. A lot of firsts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking forward to the finale for sure.
Yeah, what do we think this is going to be, right? Because all the shows so far have been like setting up from the beginning. Like even if you have everything they set up in that first episode that's going to come around for that final episode, just hold out, just chill.
Yeah, I'll be interesting to
Mandalorian season 2 finale.
Yeah.
Like I think this is going to go full Star Wars is what they're going. I think they've really held their Star Wars in reserve and said, what if we took the first first 90 minutes of a Star Wars movie and gave you that over the course of what feels like life, as opposed to what feels like serials and Star Wars and rapidly told rip-roaring adventure. Now they're like, okay, but we still know what a Star Wars movie is, and here's how they go. I just have a feeling this is going to be like a 65-minute episode of it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, because
everything's converging.
Two major things that I think are going to happen. Like the big convergence is obviously like Marva's funeral and everybody being like, Andor's going to be at that. We got to catch him there. That's probably where we're going to see Luthen going because he had that, cryptic conversation with Clea about like, do we want to go there or not? Right. And also,
I love the cryptic conversations.
Yeah.
where two people are talking about entire other topic out loud, and you can tell everything they're talking about. Tony Gilroy is real good at that.
Yeah,
stuff.
The dialogue in this show is so great.
Dialogue in the show is really like operatically perfect.
Yeah,
and that is what having an 8-minute scene as opposed to a 2-minute George Lucas scene does get you.
Yes.
You have to fill that void. You can't do it for the sake of itself. And when they have these conversations like the one you're talking about, where they're just talking about like, I believe the daisies, are brighter in spring. Well, I've never liked daisies because, like that, whatever they're talking about, but they're planning a rebellion, in Rogue One, that's like, sir, the ships are on Scarif, look, cut to, and then here come the ship, like that is the George Lucas storytelling style of Rogue One. Here it is that long conversation in which they're talking about something, supposedly talking about something entirely different. And you can tell everything they're talking about. I love that. That duplicitous stuff is just, imagine writing from that point of view for Tony Gilroy of like, that's what I'm obsessed with is rebels living a duplicitous life. Okay. How does that spread out? How does this person in the Senate deal with that? How does this? So it's cool that he holds so tight to that point of view throughout this whole, show.
Yeah. That's awesome. And we've got that coming up. We've also got off screen. I don't know if it's going to be off screen. I would assume it would be, but we've got the thing that Luthen set up with, I forget the character's name. Him and his 30 men. Krieger is going to get like ambushed and he's going to let it happen.
Which one's Krieger?
We haven't met him. He's like he's a Saw Gerrera type. He's like a pocket cell leader guy.
It's the one they brought up on the
screen. We saw
that's right. And he's like a big guy, and they're like, "This is the okay." So he've teased him the whole time.
And he told Saw like what's going to happen.
Well, so he's about to retrieve a pilot who is downed. And the Empire has set a trap. They're going to be waiting and ambush his whole
like a Bodhi situation
cell.
Right.
So yeah. That'll be. I don't think we'll see that because we haven't seen any of that so far. But that'll come up. That'll be super relevant going forward, just in terms of the relationship between the different weird little cells between Saw and Luthen for sure.
Oh, that's that's the thing that they've got to get to, because in Solo, Star Wars story, they set up all the gangs finally, and you're like, oh well, now that you've set up who the gangs are, there's Crimson Dawn, there's maybe that's been set up before, but in proper movie continuity. In this one, it's like, oh, there's all these rebel cells, like Enfys Nest is out there still too, and like an Andor season that doesn't deal with Andor so much, it sounds weird to say, would be cool, just in that sort of like, here's what this faction is like, here's what this faction is like, because I love, obviously we love the biome thing, we love, for Star Wars, of like, oh, these people are like this and dress like this, these people are like this and dress like this, these guys are pig guards, they dress like that, it's like, I want to see each faction of like, who's the, well, obviously we Saw Gerrera's faction, and they're a rougher of the bunch. There's the more softer factions that are aligned closer to the Senate and the higher ups that have to hide everything, but like, and then there's Enfys Nest, and then like, and they list off a bunch of factions that I don't think we've seen, right? Which is cool. So I almost wanted just a whole factions.
That's interesting to think about, and to think about how they all become unified, and they all have like proper like rebel like uniforms and stuff. I would love to see different parts of all these factions be like, oh, I recognize that piece from this, and like see it all like come together, where like the end result is kind of like a mishmash and an amalgamation. And I loved, in this episode, we got to see Saw Gerrera like parked outside. There were 2 X-Wings.
I know, right?
Black and white X-Wings, which look nice.
Yeah. And those look like original concept X-Wings too, which didn't have the split wing. They just were straight across. That was the original X-Wing. This looked like early model where there's no split in the wings yet, So
I'll have to take a look at that on a second viewing for sure.
Yeah. I love when the concept art stuff comes up. The Cantwell is such a good call.
Yeah.
The first Millennium Falcon was a long cylindrical ship.
It was the Tantive. It was the blockade runner.
Tantive. Oh, right, right. That did become the blockade runner.
They ripped the front off of it and made it the cockpit on the Millennium Falcon, and redesigned the hammerhead thing as the last minute thing for the blockade runner.
That's what became the off-center cockpit on the Millennium Falcon. And the reason they had to ditch that ship, do you know why?
I forget the reason why.
The TV show Space 1999 came out and had a long ship like that.
That's right. There was Space 1999.
Like, we don't want anything anybody's ever seen before, so they ditched that. Yeah.
And opened the movie with it instead.
Yeah.
Wow.
What an we'll see.
No, but it was the right move. What a ship.
Maybe next week we'll see some Space 1999 concepts.
That would be great.
Yeah.
So,
man, great environments in this too. I love some of the wide shots, and just like when they're introducing you to a place. I love all the new biomes. Oh, the Wally biome, the trash planet. That was so great. And is that where Andor lives with
that's where he was coming from, with B2EMO.
Yeah, that's Ferrix. Right?
Yeah.
That's Ferrix. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's Ferrix.
Because he's a little Wally type,
he's very Wally. Yeah.
He's very Wally. And I'm like, I love that there's a trash planet. There's a Scottish Highlands planet. And the way they're all dressed in that. Like, I love when everybody dresses up for Endor in Return of the Jedi. You're like, oh, Han's got a new coat. Luke and Leia have a new thing. And there's biker scouts. I didn't know there was another variation for woods and forestry. And so you get the same feel in this too. You're like, oh, it's a junk planet, and the Scottish Highland planet. Now they're all dressed in these cool like cloaks and man with no name things, whatever, the ponchos. Like, they're these cool ponchos. I want those ponchos. I think 2023, I'm just going to announce it on your show here. I think it's a poncho year for Adam Witt. I'm just saying. I'm announcing it here, folks. I think it's a poncho year.
We'll check in after Andor season. After whatever season of Star Wars happens around this time next year.
I don't know if Andor is going to be happening.
Yeah, no, it's got to be 2024. But like whatever is on Star Wars TV next year, we'll check in.
I think that's a good year, because that's Ahsoka will be airing, and she's wearing a poncho. So that's
there you go.
2023.
It's a poncho year. Yeah.
People started doing that Rey hair after Force Awakens for a couple of years. Maybe the poncho will catch on in the same way.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
I like who's the woman? Oh, the woman they're torturing right now. What is her name?
Bix.
Bix. Yeah.
She had the Rey thing in the opening.
Yeah.
And she's a mechanic again. What's your back end scumbag? You're not dealing with like the biggest of the biggest. No, you're dealing with a mechanic, a grease monkey. I love all that stuff. But But also, there's a torture scene in episode 4, but it's more just reference that, oh, we're going to torture Princess Leia. And then that bowling ball comes in, the door closes. You saw the exact match cut in last week's episode, right?
Yeah.
When the door closes and it goes down to the feet
that.
walking along the thing. Yeah, that's a classic cut in Star Wars.
Yeah, I love
episode 4. But they really torture her in this. Like,
they do.
That's a PG movie, Star Wars. They do not torture Princess Leia. They say they're going to. They move on. Well, we didn't get any information. That's classic. That's how that movie is told. Much more Flash Gordon. They're not going to spend 20 minutes torturing Dale Arden and Flash Gordon. No, they're going to go, oh, torture. Oh, here comes Flash Gordon. That's how that goes. But this is Andor. This ain't your daddy's Star Wars. So yeah, they really tortured her. And it ain't some Boar Gullet shit.
No. And Boar Gullet.
That was a cool fantasy torture. I like that as a variation as well. But this is like, oh yeah.
This felt like actual torture.
Yeah.
By the way, I've watched this as one big movie, so I'm flashing back to things. Everything I've watched today is from weeks ago for you guys, 11 weeks ago. The very first scene where the big Scottish guy in the cops, the cops. This is the first time we've seen galactic cops too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Cops.
Like
these
local cops.
Yeah, these aren't the Empire. They're just cops. So they're, they have their own personality. And when he starts kissing up to the gawky guy,
Cyril.
Cyril. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know the names yet.
Oh, good. I'm bad with names too.
That speech and conversation he has with him is so good. The way those two, it's almost a case study in how two people get one on the other's side throughout this entire show. There's always someone talking to someone who wants something from that person that person doesn't want to give to them. And how do they get it? And that's over and over in this show. That's true. The theme of this show in some ways. And I just love it. Like, he's like, when they're going to let the case go, and you get that first feeling of like corporate bureaucracy or whatever. And he's like, say they were drunk. It's not going to. And Cyril's like, two men, and I love that. Like, 2 men have been killed. He's like, I'm a superhero here. Hold on a second. Yeah. You don't know you're in a Star Wars movie. I do. I'm getting justice, When he talks to that guy and everything that Scottish guy says back to him, yes, justice. Oh, nope, that's no good. Like, the way he agrees with him, that is one of the best scenes still in this entire show, having watched all of them today. The duplicitous conversation about 2 different things with Stellan Skarsgård at the end. Like, there's a bunch of good scenes like that. But the one Scottish guy's like, oh yes, bad for morale. Yes, must set an example. Like, just kissing his ass, but also going, like, yeah, let's go get this guy. Like, that's, I love that scene so much. That's so scene in this show, I think. It's probably pretty humorous stuff, but that one's really funny.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Oh yes, bad for morale. Maybe someone needs to whip him into shape. It's been a while since you've been on the force as well. Buttering him up, and then he's like, oh, this guy likes, okay, well, I got you here. All right, let's go in, backfires, but that's just like getting to know the third guy from the left in that scene from Empire Strikes Back or whatever is what Andor is. And I'm here for it. It's good.
Yeah, no, me too. And looking forward to next week, because it's airing day before Thanksgiving. Okay. So we'll see how that all goes. So they got to make room for Willow coming up, which I forgot was happening.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to save those up and watch those all at one go as well. And maybe then I'll watch the original movie too, which I don't know if I've ever finished.
Oh, wow.
That was a little not after my time, but it's like, it just didn't capture that Star Wars magic for me at the time,
I see.
I was off into like G.I. Joe and Transformers, and kind of changed it up at that point.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I think we'll be covering that. And Adam, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna go ahead and move things along. But so until next time, where can people find?
I'm totally embarrassed if you have more show to get to, and I was supposed to duck out like an hour ago.
Oh no,
we don't.
Okay.
We're good, man.
We're gonna. We have 45 minutes of show we had prepared. We were just asking you if you like the show or not.
Oh no!
An hour and a half ago, you're like, "How'd you like the show?" And you're like, "Hey, it's still going on about this."
No, I loved it. I loved like all the insights here because it's really insightful.
Yeah, well,
thanks,
this
man.
has helped me think it through as well because it just washed over me, which is what I wanted it to do. I didn't want to watch each episode, wait a week after kind of an unsatisfying finale in terms of like cliffhangers. And then, so this was the way to do it. I was like, okay, I wanted to get swept. I wanted to give myself every advantage to get swept up in the show, and it worked, But it was nice talking it through with you guys. And keep Ohio warm for me. I'll be there
I am
soon.
not doing a good job at the moment.
No. What's the temperature
yeah.
you got there?
What is it right now? It's 26.
Oof.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll be through Columbus, Manasseh around Christmas time. So I'll be.
Oh
around
yeah,
there,
that'd be sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, my cousin lives near there. I like to go to Columbus, have a few beers and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, that'd be
And
perfect.
and a friend of mine runs. He's been a part of it for years. The Shadowbox.
Yes,
Theater? Yeah.
Shadowbox Theater. Yeah.
By one of my old sketch buddies, one of my first sketch groups I was ever in, has been a regular member of that cast for 25 years now, and he writes a bunch of shows. And he's like, the last time I was there, he was the guy that took your ticket, and then he seated you at the table, and then he was on
Wow.
stage. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
very
awesome.
cool.
Our other co-host Dustin probably knows him well too.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, great small world. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, good seeing you
Sweet.
guys. Good talking
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Yeah,
You
thanks,
always,
man.
Yeah, always
Adam,
good
do you
to
have a-
Star Wars.
I was gonna say, do you have anything you want to plug?
Oh,
as well?
absolutely. The
Yeah.
Ford Fiesta, my friends.
Do it. Yeah.
I have a podcast in which myself and movie guy only, and that's Harrison Ford. We started with we're talking each episode. We talk about a new film in Harrison Ford's career. Something we started because there were a lot of later year Harrison Ford movies we hadn't seen, and then we realized if we start at the beginning, we haven't seen the first 6 of those either. So
Yeah.
it's really fun to listen to us discover Harrison Ford. And now we do a Monday show live at 3:00 where we record either the script or a reaction to one of the Harrison Ford movies, and then those go into the podcast. So we do an hour show, about a half hour of that is for the podcast. So we have a Monday live show called the Ford Fiesta Live, and then we have a regular podcast. And we just got to Temple of Doom, not on the podcast feed, but on the live feed. And this is the point where when we were kids, we are madly in
That's
love
the
with
sweet
Harrison
spot,
Ford.
yeah.
Oh my God, sweet spot. Think about this. He does in the 80s, Empire Strikes Back, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Return of the Jedi, Indiana Jones, The Temple of Doom. You're just like, who is this guy? What miracle of nature is this guy? So we're there now, which is awesome. And then we'll be doing a live show. I don't know if it's this week because I might be out of town, but next week we'll be doing Witness. So
Oh yeah.
Nice.
yeah. So if you want to hear us geek out about Ford Fiesta, about the Harrison Ford, Mondays we do a live stream that's a lot looser, and we take some of the elements, put it in the podcast, or go to wherever podcasts are streamed and look up the Ford Fiesta or Harrison Ford.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Alex, where can people find more of you?
You can keep up with what movies I'm watching at letterboxd.com/Reverend Beastly. Thank you, 15-year-old me, for that forever moniker. And my @ down below will lead you to regular social media places for as long as Twitter exists, I guess. Wow.
You know how many things have been bought by people that we never knew? Like, I just assume this is one of those. I'm like, I've never known who's bought what.
No.
And this one, I ultra know who bought it. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's a great,
know.
it's
If
a
you
great
hadn't
I
told
fire.
me-
wanted you to know. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, this is the
Who
best.
bought
this-
Key Bank in Cincinnati? Like, nobody told me that.
Nobody-
It just
yeah,
changed
there's no-
ownership, and I just kept my checks in there. You know?
Yeah, those guys are boring. This is the best. This is the best show on TV this week. It's just like watching Twitter implode.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
It looks like a mistake from afar. Looks like a pain in the ass. I have general what is it called where you imposter complex. Do you know that?
Yeah,
term?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Job I've
That's
done for
me every
25
day,
years.
yeah.
Each time I get a new job, I go, I don't know how to do this. I'm a fraud. I don't know. It's just a weird mental thing. I have I hate my imposter complex so much that watching a guy spend $44 billion to buy a company he doesn't know how to run and just is mouthing off and the bet ended up going through. It's like, that's cute when it's Han Solo. When I'm watching him, I'm like, I'm breaking out in the hives. That just looks like such a mistake.
I'm
Just on display
real
for
shot.
everyone to
I'm having
see.
a real
On
life Schadenfreude
display?
party over here.
Oh my gosh. So yeah.
But yeah, he doesn't seem to feel that way at all. He doesn't know what that feels like.
You know what?
But yeah, all of us do. And you can find me fretting about that stuff at Travis Fishburne. You can find the show at Who Watches Pod. Email the show at Who Watches Podcast. Also, I'm so terrible at like reloading the YouTube. I see the your podcast partner Paul Preston has made some comments. I apologize for us not getting to those.
Oh, nice.
I'm watching.
Yeah, we
I'm
never
watching
pay
on
attention
Zoom
to comments
here.
because why would we?
'Cause I'm bad at
I'm
that.
watching on Zoom here. So yeah, I don't have it up on YouTube.
Thanks,
but,
Paul.
Yeah,
Hi, Paul.
thanks for watching, Paul. Thanks for commenting. And yeah, thank you, everyone. And this is the time of the show where I don't have the thing pulled up.
We're
So
on YouTube,
until-
we're on Twitch,
Yeah,
we're on all the
YouTube,
podcast
things.
streaming services. I showed the cards.
Oh, you did all that stuff. Awesome. And so until next week, everyone stay fat and satisfied.